Good morning, this is Laura, Aquamarine18, and I'm posting a response to the tarot tag that has been posted by Jeff Burr at the Tattooed Spirit yesterday. I'll link to his video below. Jeff's channel is great, and he shares a lot of spreads that he's designed, including the one that he's shared yesterday, which is called the Who I Desire to Be spread. And it's a 5-card spread that really looks at the idea that sometimes we may feel like we need to give ourselves permission to be ourselves. In particular, the way that I've kind of understood it and explored it is thinking about needing to give oneself permission, in particular, to make a big change in life, or even to consider making a big change in life, really. And when Jeff posted his short video talking about the spread as he had completed it for himself, it really resonated with me because I've been kind of thinking a lot about big changes, really. Big changes in terms of potentially place of living, career, things like this. Every year is a little bit like this for me. I work in education, and as the school year ends and the winter semester wraps up and we go into the summer, I'm always kind of in this position of thinking about what might be different the next year, right? Will I be doing the same thing for another year, or will I do something different? And so the idea of making these kind of big changes or big kind of career changes is scary and daunting. And so that's what I was really thinking about when I watched Jeff's video. And so I've completed the Who I Desire to Be spread for myself. And the cards I've drawn speak very much to my work life, I think. And I'm not surprised, really, given the questions as they're posed, that this is what has come to the surface. And so this is the first time that I'm sharing a reading that I've done for myself on my YouTube channel. So it's a bit new for me, but I really liked the spread that Jeff shared. And so I wanted to just come quickly and share the cards that I got. So I chose to do this spread with the Dreaming Way Tarot, which is a deck that is, I'm sure everyone will know, published by US Games. I really like this deck. I really like the bright green backs, and the general kind of color tone of the deck I find really appealing and really kind of gentle in a way. And I really enjoy the readings that I do with this deck. So here's my reading for Who I Desire to Be spread by Jeff at the Tattooed Spirit. So the first 2 cards he has said are to describe the current situation, right? And to read the 2 cards together as speaking to something about one's life, or about my life in this case, as it is now, and to read those cards together. And I like this. I often do when I'm reading for myself. If I'm using distinct spread positions, we'll pull multiple cards for each one and then read them together. So this really works well for me. And for the current situation, I drew 2 cards, the Page of Cups and the 5 of Wands. And the Page of Cups we can see looking over here to the clash going on in the 5 of Wands. And when I look at these 2 cards and think about my current situation, what I can see immediately in the 5 of Wands is a sense of being pulled in a lot of different directions, right? There's different things here, I think. The 5 of Wands often I feel like is talked about in terms of competition. And when I think about wands in terms of fiery energy, passionate energy, and 5s as numerologically kind of disruptive, I think about, when I see this 5 of Wands, as a sense of multiple things competing for my attention, and feeling pulled in a lot of different directions that aren't necessarily compatible, or perhaps if they are compatible, they're kind of competing for time and energy and attention, and feeling like there's a lot of things on my plate at one time. And we have the Page of Wands here looking at this situation. So very much then, I feel like the current situation with these 2 cards being described is having a kind of emotional reaction or orientation towards the ways that I'm being pulled or feel like I'm being pulled in a lot of different directions at once. And this very much I can make sense of in terms of my current moment, I guess, in the last couple of weeks or so, having a lot on my plate work-wise, but also in my personal life, supporting a loved one through a loss has been something that has drawn a lot of energy and a lot of time and investment, things going on with my family and so on. So there's a lot there going on all at once, much of which is kind of emotionally fraught in various kinds of ways, or really just prompts this kind of emotional reaction of the Page of Cups, right? Looking at this situation and feeling the emotional drain even of this kind of clash, the mental clash of things pulling in all kinds of different directions. So there's a kind of current situation for me. The position 3, so I guess it's kind of the second position really, but the third card, since we had 2 together before, is what do I hope for and need to give myself permission to change, right? So what is it that I need to change that might be difficult to even think about changing, I think, that might seem unchangeable, but that I need to give myself permission and say, okay, this is something that you can change in your life if you give yourself permission to do that. And the card that I got was the 4 of Pentacles. So immediately brings up for me work life, career, kind of every day. The 4 being so much about stability and foundations and the basis for everything, right? 4 legs of a table that holds things up. And the Pentacles being about, for me, resources, being about the everyday, being about how one sustains oneself, earth, energy, right? So the 4 of Pentacles as what I hope for and need to give myself permission to change. And this suggests to me that I might need to give myself permission to think seriously about changing the ways that I establish that foundation for myself, right? Which could mean a significant change in my work life, for sure. I think it could also suggest, and perhaps is both, right? Giving myself permission to change how I kind of think about what stability looks like for me, what I need, and my kind of relationship to work and wage work and to my job and things like this. So this is something that's been on my mind a lot. I've been out of school for a few years now, I guess three years now. So I'm still kind of quite early really into career path development and thinking about different potential directions there. And the 4 of Pentacles really suggests to me that I need to give myself permission to think about those potential changes seriously. And that feels really affirming, I think, because it's hard to change that routine and change your vocation, I guess. So the next card, the 4th card, is how will the outcome look when I get there? And Jeff was quite clear he does not do fortune-telling kind of tarot. This is not about what's going to happen. And I think our approaches are quite similar in that way. I don't read particularly predictively either. So the wording, important, how the outcome will look when I get there. If I give myself permission to really think about making those changes, and I make those changes, and I get there, so to speak. And I think we're always kind of getting there, right? There's no final destination per se. It's all process for me. But when I get there, when I give myself permission to make that change and I get there, what will it look like from that new vantage point? And continuing on with the kind of attention towards career, I got the Knight of Pentacles here. And the Knight of Pentacles, for me, is a card that a lot is about diligence. It's about hard work. It's about really committing oneself to a path, an approach, and following that approach in a very deliberate, very thought out. The Knight of Pentacles can be a little bit traditional in a way too, I think a little bit conservative perhaps, but following this kind of approach, very focused, right? And it's always, the Knight of Pentacles is often so very focused on that pentacle right there. And the Rider-Waite-Smith is the horse that looks like it's moving the slowest, right? Is that Knight of Pentacles, or perhaps not moving so much. It's very deliberate and taking one's time and being sure that the decisions are the right ones and doing things the way that's the right way, right? So how will that outcome look when I get there? Like hard work, but work that's really committed. And that's a really great thing, I think. Now, the final card, when I pulled this one, I was a bit thrown. In some ways, it kind of came up and I had a little reaction, I'm not going to lie. But the fifth card, how do I get there, right? How do I give myself permission to think about that big change and get to the place where thinking about that big change might get me? How do I get there? The Tower, right? And I feel like this card really just epitomizes the kind of nudge to not be afraid to make big changes, right? The Tower crashes right down to its foundation. It means questioning potentially taken for granted realities, right? Questioning things that you perhaps think were unchangeable or just took for granted or took as a given. The Tower disrupts that taken for grantedness, right? And I think that that's really in keeping with this kind of spread and the idea that we need to give ourselves permission to make these big changes, right? And part of that is always, I think, being willing to question assumptions, right? Assumptions about, in this case, looking at these cards, like what is my life supposed to look like? What is my career path supposed to look like? Given the education that I have, where am I supposed to go? Is there a trajectory that I feel like I'm supposed to be following? That I need to give myself permission to maybe veer off and do my own thing a little bit, right? And I think that I like to read cards directionally a lot, and when I lay them out, and I just laid them out, Jeff had the cards kind of crossing. I laid out the 5 cards just in a row. And when I got those cards in a row, what I ended up noticing is that we have the stability of the 4 of Pentacles, and we have the Knight of Pentacles leaving that stability of the 4 and heading straight towards the Tower, right? So making a deliberate decision to shift away from the given, shift away from a current stability, shift away from the kind of the foundations right now, right? And being willing to let those pentacles go a little bit, right? This one often has someone clinging really tightly. Being willing to let those things go and orient oneself toward change, right? And the idea of potentially building a new foundation, right? By shifting away from some of the approaches that maybe seemed to be givens and trying something new. So this is the spread Who I Desire to Be, shared by Jeff Burr at the Tattooed Spirit. I really enjoyed having the spread this morning, so thank you, Jeff, and I look forward to seeing other folks' spreads as well. Have a good day, everyone.